clap.
Hello, Ollie.
G'day, Melinda.
Good to see you.
Well, I guess first we got to acknowledge the traditional custodians of this land.
Sure
We're
do.
talking about your project. Pay respect to elders past, present and emerging. This is, was and always will be Gadigal land. Anything you want to add to that?
I agree. Thanks, Ollie.
So, we got to know each other in printmaking, which as a discipline still affects both of our work greatly. But I guess it's a nice place to start because, you know, though your print work has shaped your later practice, there was kind of a nice narrative in the way it's developed into drawing, starting with the shit factory. So did you want to talk a bit about Kurnell and that trip to the poo plant?
Sure.
How that kind of started?
Yeah, that's a great place to start. So, I was interested coincidentally in Kurnell anyway as a site because I grew up not far away, and it's always been for me a really interesting area that sort of is a coming together of the arrival of non-Indigenous people in this land, the original inhabitants, and there's just a sort of also this meshing of beautiful natural environment but also quite corrupted, despoiled industrial land as well. So I started to look at Kurnell throughout my undergraduate degree the last year. It was sort of the site that I was most interested in as a place that really was, I felt, really thick with memory. And so I was interested in it anyway, but then coincidentally we also had an experience where we went as a group of printmaking students to the sewage treatment works at Kurnell, the shit factory.
Yeah.
And, you know, that was, you know, I really surprisingly enjoyed. I thought it was quite fascinating.
So did I.
Yeah, really fascinating. I mean, it's not what you would think of as being a sort of a typical site that you might go to as a, you know, potential sort of inspiration for art making.
Yeah.
But it was fun. Yeah, really enjoyed it. Yeah, that was the beginning, I think, of my interest in memory as a subject for my practice.
I mean, even talking about like contested space is something that's kind of strong in your work. There was kind of a sense of that already happening in the tour. You know, like those tour guides very euphemistically saying what happens to the waste when it leaves the plant.
For sure. Yeah, look, it was, as I said, I was surprised. I found it really quite fascinating. And I think as a site too, I didn't realise how sophisticated the processing of human waste is. And I think, you know, for me in my practice, there's quite a lot of reuse of materials. You know, I'm really conscious that as an art maker, it's really easy to add to the amount of crap in the world. So, you know, I think that all of us, whether or not we're artists or not, you know, we really have to be thinking about, you know, what it is that we're doing and why and what are our intentions, and really wanting to make work that's actually got something worthwhile to say, you know. And I think for sure I've tried really hard in the last couple of years, you know, to be thoughtful about, you know, what I'm making and why and what I'm using to do that, so that I'm not contributing to landfill effectively. Yeah. Or worse, pollution.
Yeah. And I think in like occupying these spaces, I like the way your work kind of brushes against this tendency to look at a landscape as a kind of still or dormant site. Like it's an active stage to a lot of beauty, but a lot of horror and fucked up shit as well.
Totally, yeah, absolutely. And I think one of the gifts that is undertaking a postgraduate degree is that you buy yourself the opportunity to read and to think. And I'd found, certainly previously in the undergraduate degree, but also in life more generally, I just didn't have that time. I don't know what I was doing with my time. Obviously, I must have been very busy, paying bills, you know, bringing up kids. And I think doing this degree, it just created that space to really read and to think. And I learnt so much about Kurnell as a site and about all the things that had gone on there, certainly since, Cook turned up. And, what went on prior to that is sort of, more a matter of, speculation. But certainly walking through that site and getting to know it, I found this midden at Boat Harbour, which would be sort of 2 or 3 metres high, and just this incredible remnant of the long-term inhabitants of that site. And finding that really was, I think, finding the starting point for my project, certainly as I finished the undergraduate degree and rolled over into the postgraduate degree. So yeah, amazing site. I mean, really beautiful, really ugly, but constantly fascinating. Yeah, neglected, I think, sadly.
Yeah, definitely. Definitely. Unfortunately. So in what you're saying as well, to kind of get more into the drawing masters, I mean that thing of time, the time and space to kind of sit and consider yourself, like that is easily the most important thing, I think.
Yep.
And something like I never got time to do that. I was actually saying to Dec in the lead-up interview, like I spent 4 years just in my head going from one thing to the next, and like NAS was the first chance I had to really sit down and even scrutinise myself. Like I kind of tried to forget about a lot of past things. Yeah,
I think an arts degree, whether or not it is undergraduate or postgraduate, unlike I think probably almost any other degree, really requires you to sort of look within.
Yeah.
I think when I think about, my friends and my kids who've undertaken degrees, typically they're required to learn a body of knowledge and to be able to sort of prove that they know it to the point that they can go into the workforce and practice it. Whereas I think the thing about a fine arts degree is that it's a degree that really cares about you as an individual and what you think and how you feel about your practice and about the world around you. And I just think that makes it quite unique. And I think certainly the undergraduate degree here at NAS, I don't know how you found it, but I just felt like I was really flat out acquiring skills. It was a really demanding 3 years, and I loved it. But it wasn't until I hit this postgraduate degree as a master's student that suddenly this world of opportunity opened up to really just contemplate what is it I'm trying to say through my work, and to really look for other artists who had similar concerns and were addressing the issues that were important to me, and why were they doing that, and how were they doing that, and did they do it well, and I guess that to be able to sort of learn about other artists and to learn about theory was just utterly fascinating. I guess the thing that I've discovered with study, I mean it's obvious when you think about it, but the more you learn, the more you realise that you don't know.
Yeah.
So you kind of turn up here with a degree of knowledge and you think, I know that, that's my thing. But then the longer you're here, the more you just, the world unpacks before you, and you know that you've still got such a long way to go. And I think that's the thing that's exciting for me. This is the beginning, it's an end. I finished a postgraduate degree, but it feels really strongly like a beginning. And I think that's awesome. It's great.
Yeah. I mean, like, if the only thing you ever get out of your master's degree is self-awareness, then you've won.
Exactly. Yeah, it's a gift. And I think, I mean, you're a lot younger than me, and I guess one of the things that I didn't want to turn into was one of those people who just has acquired a certain level of expertise in life and then just sort of sits back and feels a level of complacency and self-satisfaction in that. I just think that's, for me, that would be a bit sad. I think
you didn't want to work for another 10 years and then do some hobby classes with the nanas at the Hoffman Arts Centre.
Well, yes. Yes and no, but I guess, art practice on any level is always valuable and enriching. It is. There's no doubt about that. And if that's what you do, well, then good on you. But I think, I guess I just really wanted to challenge myself, and really, just open up, my attitudes and think, well, what is it that I know and feel comfortable with, and, how much more do I not know, which is really exciting. And now I want to do more, I mean, I like maybe a philosophy degree would be really cool. I know there's sort of I mean, you kind of, the more it's a little bit like travelling, I've done a lot of travelling, and I think, you start off travelling, going to places that feel safe and comfortable, and you think, yes, I'll be fine here and everything will be okay, and, and the more you do it, the more you realise that you can go wherever you want to go. Pretty much, and I think, and I feel like learning is a little like that. There's, if you've made a start and you've been diligent and you've sort of really apply yourself, well, there's, you can do whatever you want.
Yeah, it's like 100% mindset.
It is. Yeah. It's confidence, I think. And I didn't have a lot of that. I can't tell you how bad my first art history essays were. I
got roasted too.
And I thought it was really funny to look back on, but, I realised very quickly that academic writing is not just about writing about what it is that interests you. I'm really referring to essays here. You've got to address the question. and I've learned, I've really learned how to be succinct and how to compose my arguments, just much more professionally and efficiently, rather than sort of prattling on about anything and everything that sort of interested me in the moment. Anyway, it's all a learning experience.
So you mentioned the other day that studying the Kurnell site closely gave you a lot of space, which you've sort of touched on already, to kind of think. But how did that site, and then COVID straight after, how did that change the parameters of what you were doing?
Big impact. I mean, I think all of us, as a cohort, we've been quite unique in some ways. We've really been very affected in both years by a significant lockdown, and I guess I, like everybody else, thought when the first one started, oh well, this won't last too long, we'll be out of this in no time. And here we are 2 years down the track and still going. But I think I ended my BFA thinking about other people's memories. Right, so Kurnell is a site, yes, I've got my own memories of sort of being there and what it means to me, but also I guess I'm conscious of other memories that are resident in that site that are not mine, that I was choosing to give voice to through my work. So I think what the lockdown did is that it suddenly I was away from NAS, I was stuck at home, I was without all my beautiful printmaking equipment that is so important to my art making, and like everybody, I was just kind of stuck in this house and thinking, well, now what am I going to do? I can't go to these sites anymore because I can't go out of my LGA. So I started to unpack a whole lot of boxes that I've had for years, that are all labelled Melinda's memorabilia. So there's quite a few of them. And I just started to pull out all of these old diaries and sketchbooks, and look, some of them date back from when I was a kid.
Yeah, wow.
And I have not looked at them for probably 40 years. And I got them all out and I started to read.
Yeah, nice.
And it was really just the most interesting experience, because I just think you often don't recognise how much you've changed over a lifetime. And I started to realise that I had just been transformed. I mean, I know that's obvious and that happens to everybody, but when you hear your own voice in your diaries, and you listen to your concerns, and you feel your experiences as they happened as you were writing them, and I started to think, maybe I don't have to be thinking about necessarily other people's memories and interpreting those. Maybe I can do this about myself. And I think that for me, I'm a person who's I don't like being the centre of attention. I get quite nervous at the prospect of public speaking. I hate looking at myself in videos, even in photographs. And we're all really different. You know, everyone's got their own way of responding to their own identity. But I'm quite a private person, and I guess I was not confident about making my artwork about myself. I felt like that was not enough. And when I looked at these diaries, I thought, damn it, and plus I'm stuck at home. Frankly, there's nothing else going on. What about if I start thinking about these as a source? And I think that was the beginning of it. So my body of work over this 2 years is intensely affected by the pandemic, and the fact that it's forced me really to look at myself and my life and what I've done and to make work about that. And I would not have done that. I just feel confident I can say I would not have done that without lockdown and without a pandemic. It's been quite profound.
Like the lockdown facilitated much more intimate group crits than we ever would have gotten to.
Totally. So yeah, absolutely. I think the experience, like people talk about Zoom and say it's impersonal. Okay, you know, you have to work hard to read someone's body language through a little tiny square on a screen. But I think a weird thing happened with our group where had we been sitting around a table as a drawing cohort discussing our work and, you know, sort of in conversation, I think that we might have sort of not necessarily, and also without a lockdown and all the pressure, the personal pressure that brought, the fear. It's really easy now with a whole bunch of jabs in your arms to feel more confident about this. You know, whereas, well, yeah, I get it, Ollie, I get it. But I certainly think at the beginning we forget there was no vaccine and we didn't know how serious it was going to be. So we were sitting in our little houses, we were talking to one another on Zoom, and I think we were kind of reaching out and caring for one another through Zoom, weirdly, in a way that built relationship in our group that otherwise wouldn't have happened. We might have been friends, you and I, because we've got a background through printmaking, our studios are close together, and we have, you know, we've got a friendship and we chat, you know, but there were other people in our group who were scattered further around the campus and we didn't see so much, but on Zoom we were together.
Yeah, I mean, we got to learn about, you know, Kay and Bella and Luke, and we learn a lot before we even spend any meaningful time in person. And we were with one another in one another's isolation in a way that I just didn't anticipate that would have happened. I thought Zoom would hinder the building of our relationships, and the opposite happened. Yeah, who would have thought that the teleconference facilitated such a marriage between art and life? Yes. Like I got to learn about TC with the theatres and you know, all sorts of great stories about how people's lives have shaped what they do. I doubt I would have done this without that, you know. Now that's interesting. Yeah, well certainly we've all had to embrace the technology in ways that we wouldn't have otherwise, in that, I don't know, I mean, I've spent a whole career using a computer. I came here to get away from computers. I came here to get my hands dirty. You know, I've been a designer. I could open an Apple Mac museum. You know, I've had so many of the damn things. You know, I'm just a device addict. But, you know, I think I just feel like having the technology, being able to be together through the technology, even when we were isolated, and to share the way we shared with kind of more courage. In a weird way. It's, you know, it was easier than being sort of face to face in a way. Strange. It is strange. Right, let's take a quick break. I think I've got to switch over the reel. It's funny talking to Belinda actually. She was like, on that topic, she was like, man, if you're an industrial designer before, you know, everything became more schmick. She's like, I spent 5 years designing software. Oh, really? It became obsolete within a week. How disappointing would that be? Oh, man. She's like, literally, I spent 5 years of my life on this early software. And now it's gone. For research companies. And she's like, yeah, it became obsolete so quickly. I couldn't handle that. At least seriously, I'm not kidding. At least
I really, I would have hated that.
Yeah,
If
I really
I-
like that about the pro bono stuff.
Yeah,
Like, is that what you've always done?
yeah, it
Yeah,
is.
right.
Yeah. I've always been interested in doing work that makes a difference in people's lives.
Community
So, yeah.
driven.
But then I had a few years in mainstream advertising. So,
Right.
you know, there were reasons why I did what I did, because I was sick and tired of advertising products and services that I didn't care about.
I mean, I feel like that'd be good to learn though, because, you know, those tools you learn from the propagandists you can
You do?
put towards your...
It's the same skill set.
Yeah.
It's absolutely the same skill set. Yeah, no doubt about that.
Mm.
Yeah.
So I guess we've got to get into your current project, because we haven't addressed that yet. And in getting into that, because it's kind of chiefly concerned with memory now, right?
Mm-hmm.
I really like how you talked about that. And you're like, was it Plato with the wax?
Yes, so one of the books that I read in the early part of my degree was written by a Dutch academic called Douwe Drijsma, and it was called Metaphors for Memory. And it was like a survey of all the different ways through history people have tried to sort of envision memory. Because, you know, we know because we live in an era of sort of, you know, quite sophisticated medical research, we know how we remember. But throughout history, that was just a complete mystery. People did not understand how people remembered things. And there was Plato had this really interesting notion that memory was a little bit like a block of wax, and that if you pressed something into the wax, if, you know, something that occurred, like a memory, you know, an event was sort of impressed into the wax, you would remember it because you could see the impression. And as the impression became sort of vague or blurry, or if it wasn't pressed clearly in the first instance, that led to a sort of a poor memory of the original incident. So I think that resonated with me because of my use of embossing in my work. I think of the paper in my work, the substrate, as being a little bit like a wax block. So I use the printing press as a means of creating impressions in soft paper. So I regard my work as a metaphor for memory, and the impressions in the work, sometimes they're very tactile, sometimes they're very obvious and you can see what they are, but other times they're more vague and, you know, they're a little bit obscure in the way that memory is a vague and obscure business sometimes. You can have, the diaries taught me that. I had particular memories, I thought, of things that happened in the past, okay? Memories that I may have repeated to you, Ollie. When I got my diaries out, it was so interesting. I realised that actually I'd been making stuff up.
It's incredible, isn't it?
I realised that I'd been telling stories, and when you tell a story, you remake a memory. You overwrite a previous version of something that's in your head, and you retell the story, and you're constantly just rethinking that memory and literally rewriting it. And so it's been a really interesting experience to actually come to terms with what is memory, how is it made, how does it define who we are as individuals, because it's profoundly important to who we are, and how can I actually express that in my work? How can I speak about my own memory in such a way that it's evident but not obvious, and it allows for other people as viewers to have their own memories triggered in the business of looking and thinking at my work. So I'm trying hard to do that in my work, you know, to actually express my own memories but also facilitate remembering, because a lot of our memories are communal. You know, we all have a memory of the pandemic.
Yeah.
We have individual experiences of it, but we have a shared memory as well, a collective memory. So, you know, I want to be able to tap into that as well. We all have a childhood, you know, but everybody's is different. But there is plenty of common ground. So, you know, I'm interested in all of that. But I think memory, I mean, I don't know if you resonate with this. I mean, I know you've got a brother that you're really close to. But one of the things, I have 2 brothers and a sister, and one of the things that I find is really funny about memory is quite often you'll have like a Christmas event or a birthday or something, and someone will tell a story, and someone across the table will say, "That is not what happened." And you can hear this little bell in your head saying, "Don't argue, don't argue." But you just know, in that moment, you know that your memory of whatever that event was is not the same as their memory. And that you have to respect that.
Yeah.
You know, because actually the truth probably lies somewhere in between. There's your version and my version, and there's the truth.
Yeah,
so
gobbling up each other's memories.
Yeah, but you can't, you know, there's no point wrecking a family relationship over what's the truth, you know, because in the problem with memory is that there is no truth. There's just a memory. You know, there's just a record of something that happened at some point in time. So
yeah, it's hilarious that like certain family members will fight to the fucking death.
Totally.
For like one little detail. It's like, oh, we didn't talk for 15 years.
Okay. Yeah. Look, you know, those things are easily done, but you know, my nature is not. I'm not a fighter. You know, and I think, you know, that my abstract expression of memory is my own right to claim my version of what I remember. You know, and that's one of the great things about being an artist. You know, you don't have to confer with anybody. You know, whatever you're doing because you want. That's something that you want to express, and you know, whether or not somebody else, you know, likes it or finds it engaging or stimulating is, you know, is kind of, that's just separate. I'm here to learn and to you know, to learn how to express myself, and if somebody else finds that engaging, that's just a plus. Yeah.
Do you reckon we could touch on just a bit of how you get those prints done? Because I think it's fascinating in, like, these works being a metaphor for memory, just the act of, you know, you make these wire sculptures and have these bits and bobs, and it all gets quite brutally crushed.
Sometimes I feel like I'm challenging channeling a sort of like a medieval torture chamber operator, because so I collect stuff. I have stuff that I've collected over time. I am a bit of a hoarder. Those boxes I know I alluded to, I have quite a lot of stuff. So but the act of putting something through an etching press is pretty fatal. It does tend to destroy things. So what I do is when I'm making a work, I pull together a collection of objects that are important and have meaning and are often connected to events and people that I'm referring to in the work. And I tend to also make wire drawings. So I think of wire as like a three-dimensional line in space. So I've got a collection of different kinds of wires made of different materials and thicknesses, and I tend to sort of string together objects using the wire, and I think a little bit like that they are kind of connected memories. I think about them as visualizing memory in some way. You know, I have to kill you having told you all this stuff. I'm only kidding. So I gather together all this stuff that I have assembled, that I've collected, that I've made, and I have beautiful paper. The paper is something that I think is worth spending money on. So I buy rolls of a French printmaking paper that's incredibly thick and durable, and I cut big sheets off a roll. I soak them in water for usually 20 minutes, half an hour. That makes them really nice and soft. And then prior to doing that, I've actually often folded them into some kind of pattern that I want the final drawing to take. So I soak them, and then I layer the surface with quite a lot of ink, charcoal, graphite, metallic pigments, lots of dry pigments, you know, that are coloured. And then into that I layer all the objects. So, I mean, I know it's quite sculptural actually. It's quite a sort of, you know, I love making. I've always loved making stuff. So this part of the exercise I really enjoy. So I pack them down until I've kind of got a sandwich of paper layered with all these things. This is where the fun starts. So then I go to the etching press And I put thick press blankets either side of it, because really this is not very good for a press unless you're protecting the roller and the press bed really carefully. And I literally I crank the roller up quite high, and I go backwards and forwards probably maybe a dozen times, and every time I tighten it and tighten it and tighten it.
Oh, okay.
So what's happening is that it's just going down and down and down. This is the torture. And you can hear the paper groaning and
like
creaking.
Oh.
So and you can hear, if there's anything breakable in there, you can hear it cracking and fragmenting.
Oh.
Yeah, it's quite violent, and you keep your fingers well back. As yet, I've not had a finger incident, but you could really easily, squash a finger. Anyway, so I squash it right down, really, really hard. And then I wind the roller back up, and I pull it out. And then the fun part, the most fun part of all, is just unfolding this thing and discovering what you've got. And what you've got is just this deeply impressed piece of paper that then folds back out. And I pull off all the objects, and then I flatten it, usually for a couple of days, between butcher's paper underweight. And the butcher's paper soaks up a lot of the moisture out of the paper. And that's it. And then I tab it, and it's ready to hang on the wall. So that's my process, just like that.
Just like that.
Yeah, but I think it's been fun because I've invented it as I went. I've had some fails. Trust me, I've had times where
Half of them are in the studio.
I've squeezed things through the press, and I've had a waterfall of black ink coming out the end of the press onto the floor. And I've been looking around and thinking, oh, I hope there's nobody going to turn up in this space any minute, because there's black stuff everywhere, and I had to clean the press and clean the floor. Anyway, I've got better at that. Yeah, I've got better at that. So I'm going to have to buy a press. That's the bottom line. Yeah, I'm out of here in another week, and I can see I'm going to have to buy an etching press. But it doesn't need to be a really big one, because I just, because I do make those drawings quite small, so I can work on a quite compact press. So
yeah, I mean, down the track you might have space for a bigger one too.
Yeah, one day. Yeah. I mean, I've always loved printmaking. I really, I feel like I did that undergraduate degree with you, and there's a lot about the process that I really love. I love the whole business of squashing things, because that's what printmaking is.
Yeah.
I remember Angus Fisher, one of our teachers, saying to me, the thing about printmaking is you have to like squashing things. And I remember thinking, yes, I do. And it was hard with the lockdown at home, because I didn't have a press. I tried to drive over things in the back lane out the back of my house. That didn't work so well. I tried piling every single book that I own on top of things, thinking that that's quite a lot of weight. And what I discovered is that actually nothing presses like an etching press. Yeah, I don't know what the per square centimetre downward force is of an etching press, but I'm sure it must be a lot.
I mean, you'd have to hit up the medieval fucking torture museum to find anything analogous.
Seriously, that's what I feel like. I really do, just the way I'm cranking it tighter and tighter and tighter.
It's pretty fitting for this place, isn't it?
Yes, it's had its torturous moments. That's very true. Yeah, but I still love that process of the reveal. What have I got inside? And that's printmaking. That moment when you lift the paper off the plate. There's a thrill that comes with that.
Yeah, I think that's important too, because I find it funny when Carolyn calls me out and says, you're still a printmaker because you hide behind your process. And
yes.
I think that's very true, but you actually provided a nice counter to that when you said, well, maybe we just like the end result and we're given more time to think about what we're doing.
Yes, I think that there's something about printmaking and that period that you've got when you are engaged in the process, that for me, it buys me thinking time. Whereas I find when I'm drawing or painting, you're kind of on all the time. It's a more intensely engaged exercise. Whereas printmaking, you've got this sort of these process moments where you can be free thinking in a way. You know, you're physically working on, you know, cleaning a plate or whatever it is you're doing, you know, inking a plate, but your mind is going all the time. You're thinking about ideas and what the next plate's going to have on it. So, yeah, it's very different.
Yeah, and I guess the last thing to wrap up as well is because, you know, something that's important in my copper works, they started because I realised that my eye was out of sync with my hand. And
tell me about that.
Well, I started a talk show, as you know, and as we're kind of doing now. But, you know, that took 2 or 3 months to learn how to get that done. By the time I came back motivated to make art, I couldn't draw for shit.
Wow.
So, and that was just down to...
Is that during the lockdown?
That was the first lockdown.
Yeah.
And I found that it took a period of going out into the field every day, doing, you know, 1 or 2 drawings a day, and within a week I'd, you know,
reconnected.
Like no time had passed. But it's similar to, you know, the way I've had to approach music in all my instruments and maintaining those skills. Life drawing for you seems to hold a kind of special place in that regard.
Yeah, that's interesting. Yeah, I think life drawing is a very different form of art making for me. I equate life drawing, and I know this is a bit of a crass sort of connection, but I equate it with going to the gym. It gives me a certain fitness and capacity and a sense of strength. Because the thing about life drawing is that you've got a model in front of you, and your sole task is to record that figure. You may have different choices in terms of the materials or the way you're seeing and recording the figure, but essentially it's you and the task of recording that figure. And I find that incredibly therapeutic. I do, because I find that otherwise conceptually you can spend a whole week attempting to make these big drawings, and when they don't, you put a lot of work in, and when they don't turn out and they don't look like you want them to, and the paper sticks together, and it's just not working the way you want it to. It's quite demoralising, and you feel quite sort of downcast. And I think part of the job of being an artist is often, it's as much just wrestling with your own head all the time. It really is.
Yeah.
And it's sort of getting better at managing yourself in a way. And for me, life drawing, going into a studio with a bunch of other artists, drawing the figure, generating half a dozen decent drawings in an hour or 2 or 3, just at the end of that period, I think to myself, it's okay, I can do this. I'm sure the dentist that I go and see doesn't have the same kinds of professional anxiety, I hope not anyway, when they're looking after your teeth, or the guy who fixes my car, or all the other professionals in my life. I don't think that they have sort of days like you do sometimes when you're an artist, where the whole day is just crap. You've spent an entire day and all you've made is a mess. That's really hard. Yeah, really hard. So I think with life drawing, it's reassuring for me. It really is. It's like going to the gym. You walk out and you think, yeah, I can get on with the day.
Yeah, so aside from the maintenance of skill, it's even just keeping yourself mentally
fit, capable, confident. Exactly. Yeah, exactly. Yeah. And I love it for that reason. Yeah. It's one of the things I really miss about NAS is the constant engagement with life drawing. They do it really well here. Yeah,
maybe
really
Marianne
well.
can get you back to do some workshops.
I'm trying. Yeah. Love it.
Any other pressing plans for the future before we...
Yeah, I think I'm pretty interested in my idea of opening an experimental space for drawing. Really keen to do that. Really want to be able to create an environment where, emerging artists can come and exhibit really unusual, conceptually strong drawing. So that's sort of big on my list of things to do. I think the big thing for leaving a place like this where you've had such structure around your art making is just to really have a routine. Like, I think it could be really easy to just drift out of here and just to sort of not make as much art as you should. And I think I'll be really concentrating on staying active as an artist. Yeah, I think that's really important. And staying in touch with my friends.
Yeah, definitely.
Don't want to lose them. Yeah. Otherwise, I'm pleased to be done.
Cool. Thanks, Melinda.
Thanks, Ollie.
It's been good. Catch you soon.